Greetings to all. This is Ranjini, working as an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at RMD College of Engineering. In this video, we can see about the types of function prototype. Before moving into the type, why do we create a user-defined function? Suppose if we want to execute some sort of code repeatedly again and again, number of times into our program, into a main function, in that case, we will create a separate user-defined function and we will write that particular code into that user-defined function, and whenever needed we will just call that using a function name into our main function. That is called as a user defined function. So how do we categorize these functions? Is based on the argument and the return value, we will categorize a function, whether the argument are present or not, whether it has a return type or not. Based on this element, we will differentiate, we will categorize the function. So there are four types: function with argument and return value, function with argument and no return value, function with no argument and return value, function with no argument and no return value. So all the user defined function will have a three main component, that is function declaration, function definition and function call. A function declaration is as like a variable, normal variable. Before using a variable, we will declare a particular variable. As like that, before using a function, we have to declare a particular function. That is called as function declaration. Next one will be the function definition. Now, whatever the code has to be executed, have to be written into, we have to define the function. That is called as defining a function. And function call, whenever we need a particular code, we will call that using the user defined function into our main program. That is called as function call. First type is function with argument and no return value. So what does it mean? With argument means this is a user defined function. This part is the user defined function. Into that user defined function, what we are doing is we are calling two arguments, int a comma int b. So we call it as function with argument and why no return value. So the return type is void here. Obviously the void does not have any return value. As I said, there are three main components. This part is the function declaration. So I'm declaring a function void add of, how I'm passing two parameters. Two parameters are of integer data type. So I'm giving a data type as int comma int. Since it's an integer data type, I'm giving the data type as int comma int. Since I have an argument, void add of int comma int semicolon. So this should comes after the header files. Once after the header files, I have to declare a function, and this part is the definition part. Here, these parts are called as a definition part. Into the definition part, what I'm saying, I have a user. Also, this is a basic program to add two numbers. So what I'm doing is void add int a comma int b. I have given a variable a and b. Pass this variable into the argument itself. Then I'm declaring a normal variable c. Then printf, enter the values. The normal printf statement, and scanf, I'm entering the values. I'm assigning a value for a and b. Then I'm adding c is equal to a plus b. Then finally print sum is equal to percentage comma c, printing the value of c. Now let me move into the main function. Into the main function, I'm declaring int a comma b. I'm calling a function. This is what we call it as a function call. So I'm calling a function add of a comma b. Since why I'm giving a comma b, this part is a function with argument and no return value. So no return value. Obviously, our user defined function does not have any return value. So I am giving a comma b is here into our user defined function. I have passed two arguments. So here also I have to pass two arguments. I'm passing two arguments a comma b. Okay, so how does the program execute over here? Yes, first it will be the header file. Next automatically the compiler will move on to the declaration part. Then where a compiler will move first. Since I have next line is the user defined function, but the compiler will move on to the main function only. First the compiler will move on to the main function only. Doesn't matter where I have written the main function is, but once after the header files declaration part, the compiler will move on to the user main function only, even though the user defined functions are present at after the declaration part, but the compiler will execute the main function. So here I have declared two variables. Two variable will be a and b will allocated with a memory space, and then I'm calling a user defined function. So at this point, what happens is the compiler will search for the user defined function add with two arguments. Which user defined function has add with two arguments? So it will search for. So it will move on to void add of int a comma int b. Into there what I have given int c. Then now this all these part will be executed. So finally the output will be enter the values. 45 comma 45. I'm entering two values 45, 67. Finally the sum will be displayed. This is function with argument and no return value, and the second type is function with argument and with return value. So here obviously header files. Once after the header files, the declaration part. This part is a declaration part, and this part are the function definition, and this is a function call. So into the function declaration part, what we are doing is this is with argument. So into the argument have passed two parameters int a comma int b, and with return type, isn't it? So it's since it's with return type, see here I'm giving a return type as int. In the return type for me is int, because I have given a function type as with return type. So here the data type should be int. Int only will return a value. So here what we have to do, as usual in C, I am entering the values and I'm initializing a value for a and b. C equal to a plus b. So here in the previous part what we did is, since it's with the no return value, at this point into the user defined function itself we have printed the output into the user defined function itself. Why so is this is with no return value, function with no return value. But the next part is with return value. Here we shouldn't print the output over here, we just have to return the value to the main function. So I'm returning, C has to be printed finally, isn't it? So I'm returning the value of C to the main function. So let me into the main function, what's happening over here, int a comma b. Int sum is equal to, so what I'm passing, this is a function call. Sum is equal to a plus b. This is a function call. What I'm doing is here, I'm calling a plus b. Why I'm storing it into the other variable is, why? Because here I'll return the value of C. I will not print anything. I'll just return a single variable. A single integer type, isn't it? Since C is the integer data type, so I'll return one integer value. So I'm storing that integer value into the data variable names, into the variable sum. So I will add two numbers, and finally the addition of a and b will be stored into C, and into the user defined function what we are doing, I'm returning the value of C only. Finally, if the value of C is 25 means I'm returning C to the main function. So I'm storing that into one more, I'm creating one more variable in sum, I'm storing that into the sum. Here I'm calling function call. Since I have two arguments into the function call, I have called a comma p. I'm using 2. Finally, I'm printing the output sum is equal to percentage t comma sum. So the differentiation is, if there is no return value, we will print statement in the user defined function itself. But if there is a return value, means we will just return the final output to the main function. So into the main function, we will do all those printing statements. The third part is function with no arguments but with return value. Yes, function with no argument. This is a user defined function. Here we don't have any arguments. So the declaration part, how the declaration part will be, if the function does not have any argument, means into the argument we have to pass void. Simply we can pass void. Or else no issues. If we didn't pass void, also no issues. But in some case there is some scenario error might occur. So let us make a habit of passing void into the bracket. So I'm declaring it, since it's with return value. So I have used the return type as int add of void. This is a declaration part. Next is function definition. Into the function definition, yes, this is also with return value. So I will not print anything. So here I'm not passing any argument, isn't it? So argument parameter part is empty. I'm declaring 3 variables a comma b comma c. I'm printing a value and I'm initializing a value of a and b. I'm adding a plus b and storing it into c. Finally, I'm returning the value of c. So printing statement has not happened in the user defined function. So into the main function, what I'm doing, I'm adding and I'm storing. I'm not passing any argument. I'm calling that function and storing that value into the variable sum. And finally, I'm printing it. So how it will be executed? Once after the header files and declaration part, the compiler will move on to the main part. Sorry, the compiler will move on to the main part. Into the main part, what happens? I'm calling, or function call is happening. So at this point, what happens? The compiler will move on to the user-defined function. At this line, what happens? The compiler will move on to the user-defined function. Into the user-defined function, it will ask for enter the values. So I'm entering the values for two values, A and B, 9 and 6. Then the addition will happen and it will pass the value to C. So C will be the added value will be stored into sum. The next I'm printing the into the main function. Next here the compiler will move to this point, and this point sum is equal to percentage %t comma sum. Whatever value present in the sum will be printed. This is a function with no argument and return value. Next type is function with no argument and no return value. So here as like a header file, the next part will be the declaration part. Declaration part void add of void. Since I told you before itself, if we are not having any arguments, means let make a habit of passing void into the argument. So I'm defining a user defined function. So here it's no return type, isn't it? That's why I'm giving a return type to be void. If it's a return type means I'll give a return type as int, but here it's no return type and no argument. I'm not passing any parameter into the argument, and also we are not using any int data type return type as int or floaters. We are using a return type as void since it does not have any return type. So it's with no return type. So we are printing the statement here itself. So into the user-defined function, what happens? We are entering the values and we are initializing a value for A and B. We are adding it and finally we are printing it. So into the main function, once after this line, the compiler will move on to the main function only. It's not necessary we have to write the user-defined function first. Once after the user-defined definition part of the function only, we have, it's not a condition as like that. Now, once after the definition part only, we have to write a main function. There's no condition as like that. User defined function can be anywhere else in the program and written at the beginning. But wherever we write, the compiler will execute the main function only. At first, the compiler will execute the main function only. So here we are calling a function. So what happens? The compiler will move on to the user-defined function. Here the compiler will move on, and that point it will ask for enter the values. Enter the value for A and B. Then I'll add it. I'm displaying the sum. Finally, the output will be displayed. Thank you for watching.